Hey everyone, good morning. Day 92. Day 92 of spiritual healthcare. Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is a super rainy day here in Edmonton right now. I don't know what you guys are up to, but we've got a great topic ahead of us this evening or this afternoon. We're going to continue our discussion about narcissists and narcissism and what you do about it, whether it be in the paranormal field or just in your everyday life, and answer a really, really great question about historical locations as well that I'm excited to get onto. So good morning, everybody. Good morning to everybody. Lucy and Des, nice to see you. Patricia, again, is at work, so it's weird to not see her popping up. But it is good to see everybody logging in. It's good. It's an awesome day. Tomorrow I am headed out of town for a little bit, so I will be back next week. But today we are talking about narcissism and how that applies to the field, what you do about it, and if you've got one in your life, how do you deal with it? Because they are they tend to infiltrate everything. So we've got lots to discuss today. About all of that, and continue the discussion about the dark triad, which we talked about in psychology yesterday. Lots of different things today. So good morning to Ed and Lucy and Des, and nice to see everybody logging in. Hey guys, I hope you guys are having better weather than we are. We are like pouring rain here, which is just nice because I love the rain, but it's pouring today, and not such a great day to get chores done, running around done in, but there it is. So I hope you guys are having an awesome start to the week. It's going to be a very interesting subject today. I think it's something that's touched so many people's lives, and oftentimes when you get a narcissistic personality or one of these people that are either sociopathic or psychopathic or whatever, and to end up in your experience, it changes your world really quickly, and we get to choose how it's going to move our world one way or the other. We get to pick. They really are an indicator for a lot of self-examination and whatnot. So we're going to be chatting a lot about that today, what we do about them and how not to get intertwined with that, because it can be really, really hard, especially if it's a family member or something like that. Good morning to Ange, nice to see you. And Sally says she's feeling under the weather. That sucks. That's not good at all. You can't feel under the weather. You can't feel under the weather. This is a good place to be though if you're feeling under the weather. Lots of positivity and lots of good topics today. It's going to be really fun. So, as I say, I think we're gonna learn a lot. Learn a lot today. I know everybody that, or so many people that I've encountered over the years have had dealings with people like this. I've had clients like this. I've dealt with organizers and whatnot that have been this way. It can be pretty crazy. So good morning to Brandy and Shadow. Nice to see you guys as always. We're gonna delve into this crazy rabbit hole of a topic today. But the first thing that I wanted to get onto and answer was a question about historical locations, because we get a lot of people, of course, investigating these places and whatnot. And I thought the question was really good. It was, we all investigate historical locations. Do you think that older locations have more energy than a location of this time period? So I thought we could launch into today with that, because I think that's really valid. I think a lot of people are, really bent on the historical stuff, and we forget about the modern day occurrences and psi occurrences that happen all the time. So oftentimes, of course, these locations have a deeper history. They have a longer time period where, stuff has had the opportunity to happen. So we often think that, if something's older, then it must mean that it is haunted. And that's just not true. There's a lot of different factors that go into what creates various different types of parapsychological phenomenon, whether it be residual energy or, apparitions or hauntings or, whatever it is. There's a bunch of different factors that play into it. Residual energy tends to show up in older locations because I think the geology has something to do with it, as well as the building materials, I think, has something to do with it as well. But in terms of actual hauntings, in terms of activity of conscious activity, usually it's the places that are occupied that tend to have more activity than places that are not. So it's and oftentimes historical locations locations aren't really occupied anymore, right? Like they're often, you know, abandoned, or they're left for tourists or whatever. So I don't think necessarily age has like everything to do with it, although it does, as I say, give a place more opportunity to come in and or to have events happen and whatever, and build that side of it up. But we have to remember that the haunted places are often tied to human emotion, right? Like they're usually tied to human emotion. And if we've got a place that has had, you know, quite a lot of stuff going on, you know, and especially current, like people that are, you know, in and out of a building. That's why haunted hospitals exist as a show, because it's, you know, there's just constant activity. There's constant people activity going on. So emotions are all over the place and running high and whatnot. And there's impactful things that are going on. But, you know, you can have a place that is haunted that is relatively new, depending on what's going on in the environment and who's there, and, you know, all sorts of things. So there's lots of factors that you know, all cram into it. And of course, it also depends on the individuals and whether or not they are in the range of perceiving that activity to begin with, right? Because we know that if somebody is, you know, bumping along in that kind of pure positive energy and pure positive space, then they often, you know, they get a barrage of activity that's really positive and good and whatnot. And then you've got people who, you know, are at the other end of the spectrum and they get the negative stuff. And then you've got the people that are kind of in the middle that, you know, they're not in range of either. So they walk in and can't figure out if it's haunted or not. So really it comes down to a bunch of things, both, you know, your own personal receiving frequency, your own space that you're receiving from, as well as what's going on in the environment. So does it have to do necessarily with historical locations? No, not at all. There's a whole pile of factors that go into it. So wanted to start off with that today because I thought that was a great question and whatnot. But today we're delving into, well, yesterday we delved into the topic of how to identify narcissistic people, or people with personality disorders and things like that, people that are going to be a problem in your experience. And we started to talk about a bunch of those different things. So I'm going to run through them again quickly for those of you guys who weren't here yesterday. We talked about how oftentimes these people live in a fantasy world, very delusional. Sometimes you'll get this if you're interviewing clients and stuff like that. You got to watch out for some of this stuff. Their facts just don't reflect reality. They have a series of often really short-term relationships. Like they can't keep anybody in their life. They usually thrive. They love the drama. So they'll set things up, like they'll triangulate people against each other and all sorts of things like that. They often will brag about like outsmarting people. They're super irresponsible. They tend to be very self-destructive, despite the fact that they're, you know, they have a really high sense of entitlement. They're super self-destructive towards others, and they tend to have no empathy and no remorse about anything that they're doing. Like they just don't seem to care. So we kind of ran through those yesterday, but what I wanted to approach today is to understand how people like this do what they do. So if you have some of these individuals in your experience or in your life, or you've got like, you know, whatever is going on, then you can start to see the patterns of what they're doing, so that you can get a handle on it. Because we see some of this stuff, interestingly enough, with negative entities as well. Some of the behavior patterns definitely cross over into some of this also. So you're going to see the correlation when we've talked in the past about negative entities and some of the behavior types and stuff like that. You guys are going to see a crossover. It's definitely present. So when we talk about what they do and how they kind of make people a target, the one thing I have to point out right off the bat, and this goes with both negative entities and with toxic people like this, is the fact that if you are hanging around kind of in, you know, self-doubt, self-deprecation, you know, you're doubting yourself, all of that kind of thing, it really does put you on a totem pole in their eyes, right? So with negative entities, it's a little less nefarious, because they tend to just, that's how they operate. They're like a dog pack. They kind of put you on a totem pole based on your energy, and it's less personal. And with the narcissistic people, or these people that tend to have these like crazy personality disorders, they see that as an opportunity to kind of one up you. Like, if you turn around, say, for example, and you coming into a situation, say a job or job interview, right? And you're going, man, I don't know if I'm going to get this job. I hope I do. Immediately, if that's in your energy, if that's in your space, then what happens is they are immediately on top of that because they see it as a way to step up and over you to get to what they want. So there's a lot of infiltration in your experience that tends to happen with people like this. And this is something to really pay attention to. They tend to want to be involved in like a whole different whack of areas in your life. Like they're suddenly just sort of intertwining themselves into everything. And it's something to watch out for because it's oftentimes it's something that people will mistake for interest and stuff like that, and oftentimes it can be, but when we couple it with all the other things we're going to go through, you'll start to see why this is such a problem. So the one thing that they do often is they create a network of people to conspire with. Okay, so for example, all of a sudden they're talking about your friend or something like that, or your mutual friend with you in a negative light, or just being super gossipy with multiple people. And I guarantee you, if they're doing it with you, they're doing it to you, like every single time. So they create sort of these confidants, like, hey, you know what? Come over here. I gotta tell you this. So it's this weird, like, intricate kind of conspiracy thing they get going on. They depend a lot on people's approval, which seems so weird because when we kind of talked about this yesterday when I was mentioning the legend of Narcissus and the mirror, right? Where Narcissus is relying on that mirror in order to gain to see it himself, because ultimately there is no self with a narcissist. They don't have a self, so they have to have a reflection coming back at them about it. So they're very dependent on people's approval, which can make them kind of obnoxious. Like, I used to be, years and years ago, I did street performing for a while, and I was kind of in that circle. And what was so interesting about that for me was the fact that there was so many of the people, not everybody, but so many of them were just screaming narcissists. And that was one of the reasons why they got into what they did, was because it was instantaneous gratification. They could get approval by doing something crazy or stupid or funny or something like that, and you'd have a crowd of people that would clap for you. It's one of the reasons too why they're so prevalent in entertainment, because it's like instant gratification, and they can be really hard-headed and really driven in that way. The other thing that I think is so important to understand about these people, and I think is really crucial to know, is the fact that they are once they get to know you, once they realize that you're a target, they start to build kind of a psychological file on you. Okay, so they're gathering data all the time. And we talked about this before in spiritual healthcare, where it's really important for us to be observant and be gathering data on the people around us, right? Like we have to be able to do that. We have to be able to do that without judgment. Except what they do is they start to build a psychological file on you in order to understand how you tick, so they can use that to get something that they want. And oftentimes it's not good. They either want to step up and over you, or they don't like you, so they're gathering that information and putting a smile on their face or something like that. But they're building these files, and they're starting to gather information to use at a future date. And I think it's something that's so important to really get with people like this, is that nothing that you're saying is going wasted, even though sometimes it seems like that. So they're waiting and listening for things like your fears, your upsets, your what your trigger points are, all of these different things. They like to be able to gather that information to start to press buttons. Okay, like they just start to press buttons. And when they know that they can press your button, and that they're going to get some sort of an emotional reaction, then they know they've got you kind of on a string at that point, and they can do some crazy stuff and say stuff that, like, it seems just outrageous. For example, it might be a situation where, if you've got a hot button, say at work, about getting a certain promotion or something like that, or you've got to worry that people are talking behind your back. If you know that, then, and the narcissist knows that, then what they're going to do is they're going to start, fueling that. They'll might approach you and go, hey, just so you know, hey, like there's all these people that are talking behind your back and nobody likes you and you should be aware of that. So it can start really subtly. So many times when I think we think about things like sociopathy and psychopathy and all of that kind of thing, we think about the worst of the worst. We think of serial killers and we think of people like that, and that's just simply not the case all the time. There's a spectrum, and narcissism is a spectrum. So when we start to look at these different individual factors, we have to understand that it's like it might not be somebody that's out to knife you in the back, literally. It might be somebody who is just trying to sleaze their way into your experience because they either don't like you because you're doing something they want, or they're angry or jealous or whatever it is. And most people don't realize, because most narcissists will tell you straight up, like, they're not jealous, and it's like the furthest thing from the truth. They're like exceptionally jealous, and it gets nasty really, really fast. My partner told me this the one time, and I will never ever forget it. I was dealing with this was to do with work, and I was dealing with a business partner at the time. And I started seeing these like weird like red flags that kept popping up like this. And I will never forget him telling me this. And he said, you have to remove yourself from this person. And I was like, well, why? And he said, because this is the behavior that starts out this way and it turns criminal. And I will never ever forget those words, because I watched this escalation of this situation get just really out of control and crazy, and behaviors that started coming out of her that I would never have attached to her in a million years. So it's really interesting. It's really interesting. So we talked about this idea of building a file. The other thing that they tend to do is they misdirect a lot. So trying to get an answer out of that. And if you guys have had a conversation with one of these people, you will know this is really hard. If I have a client that's like this, it makes it almost impossible to deal with them. So they will turn around and misdirect all your answers. So you ask them a question and you can't ever seem to get a response out of them that actually adds up or makes any sense. This is what I'm talking about. Like it's like trying to sack fog. You can't do it. They'll ask you a question in response, or they'll start talking about something different, or they'll push the conversation in another direction. Suddenly all of a sudden they're talking about you, and you're going, wait a minute, I just asked you something. Or they make you wrong. That's the other thing you'll see happen. You'll try to get an answer out of them, and they'll make you wrong. Oftentimes, if you guys watch any political news, you'll see this quite frequently. No names, but you'll see this quite frequently, where they automatically make you wrong, and you can't nail them down for an answer. They'll give you this long answer, this string of conversation, and you realize at the end of it that they haven't actually addressed your question, and you're going, "What just happened? That made no sense." So they tend to blame others quite frequently. A narcissist is never, ever, ever responsible, ever, for anything that they say or do. It will always be your fault or someone else's. And this is where things tend to get quite dangerous with them, because many times I'll hear of people that are, associating with them or whatnot, and they don't realize that as soon as you are in business with them, as soon as you are attached to them in some way, you are then part of the problem. You are going to be a target at some point. It's not a matter of if, it's just when. It's just when. You are now setting yourself up. You are in the range of their circle, and if you're in range of their circle, then there's an opportunity for them to turn around and make you a target. Just simply because they don't want to take responsibility for whatever it is. And it could be something so stupid. It could be something that's just, going on in their life at the time, and they start to throw it at you or project at you. This is one thing that I noticed with the individuals that I've dealt with over the years, is that oftentimes if they are accusing you of doing something, it's because they've done it. And this is something to really, really pay attention to and watch out for. Because sometimes they'll come out with stuff that's like so not who you are, right? Like maybe you've got a partner that comes to you and is like, you broke into my bank account and you're taking my money, or you're snooping through, my emails, or whatever it is, right? And you're going, I've never done that. I would never do that. What the hell? Why would you think that I would do that? And that's usually what it is. It's because they're doing it to you, and they can't, because they don't have any empathy, which we talked about yesterday. They can't fathom you not doing it to them. So they feel, something's going on. They project that on you, and that becomes a real problem. They tend to be extremely paranoid. Extremely paranoid. People are out to get them. Everybody's out to get them. You're out to get them. The last individual that I dealt with in regards to this subject matter, that was actually the kicker for me, to turn around and say, we're done talking, because that it became a situation where she became exceptionally paranoid, that I was lying and going behind her back and this, that, and the other thing, none of which was true, but it became just explosive paranoia. It was unbelievable. So it just has to stop. So you have to be very careful about that. They tend to lie consistently. Usually if their lips are moving, they are lying to you. Is usually how it works. Sometimes they will mix kernels of truth into it, which makes it kind of difficult to detect what's going on, or they will obscure the truth enough that you're kind of confused about it. But let me tell you, they can't help themselves. They just can't help themselves. They tend to, these are the types of people too, that they're committing fraud. They are the cheaters. They are they're all of those things. And they tend to oftentimes isolate their victim. So here's where we often see a crossover between the paranormal activity that we're talking about, as well as the paranormal activity, as well as people just in our everyday life. So when we think about things like lying, when we're getting answers through the Ouija board, or we're talking to negative entities and stuff like that. We've talked before about the idea of kind of them putting up this bluff identity. And this is kind of what narcissists do as well, is that they tend to put up this bluff identity to basically bring you in and make you secure in what they're telling you. You never ever see the real person, ever, because there is no real person. They don't know who that is. So you see a version of them that you get to experience and create, but you never ever see the real person. They tend to isolate their victims very, very quickly. Isolation, number one tool, guys. Number one tool of an abuser is to segregate that person. And it can be through a myriad of ways. Isolation with paranormal events tends to happen quite regularly, because what ends up happening is that oftentimes people are just too afraid to speak out. They're freaky. They're freaked out. They're worried that there's gonna be a judgment on them. And the same goes with toxic people and narcissists, is that they believe that there's going to be some sort of a judgment placed on them. And oftentimes it's because you've got somebody who's saying, you're not worth anything. Why would anybody believe you? That's stupid. Or of course the old famous gaslighting, which has really come to the surface nowadays, which is really good. People are starting to understand that, there's a name for something where, an individual is saying to you, they say one thing, the next day you ask them the same question, and bam, you get a different answer, and you're told you're nuts. So I think we have to, really, really pay attention to that, really understand that it's a technique, it's a strategy. The name gaslighting, in and of itself, actually came from a really interesting place. It was a film way back called Gaslight, and it was about a guy who would mess with the oil lamps in their house, the gaslighting in their house, and every time the wife would be like, did you turn the lamps down? And he'd go, no, that's stupid, you're crazy. And, she'd go, no, I swear, I turned the lamps up. And then he would go and do it again. So anyway, that's where the term gaslighting came from. And it was just that sort of subtle manipulation. So oftentimes these people as well, they really abuse authority figures. They hate authority figures. They don't like them. They just abuse the crap out of these people. And they abuse their authority as well. They don't like authority, and they abuse their authority. So if they are in a position of power, you will see them enact oftentimes just like, it can seem like cruelty, sometimes it is cruelty, anger, manipulative punishments, all sorts of crazy things like that. They tend to be revisionist historians. So you'll go and ask them about the past, and they've got a whole nother story, like nothing like that happened. Again, we see this in politics quite readily now, where, you know, they'll be asked a question, and how you know, something went, or how an event went, or something like that is completely contrary to the facts in their head. It's like they've rewritten it, and honest to God, they could pass a freaking polygraph. They believe it. Like, they literally convince themselves to the point where they believe it. I had there was an organizer that I dealt with a number of years ago, where she would turn around and point blank tell you, like, you are, you know, oh yeah, this is, you know, this event went really well. We made a ton of money. Oh, it was just so amazing, and my business did amazing, and so on and so forth. And then you'd look at the numbers, and I mean, they were so far into the red. They made no money. They were severely in debt, and it put them further into debt. But she would tell you, like, right to your face, that she made just a ton of money, and it was the greatest thing ever, and she'd go and do it again. So it was pretty nuts. So there are some factors that you guys can work with to start to identify some of these people, because I think it's really important. I think it's important we understand it, and especially when, you know, you're dealing with clients, whether you're dealing with you know, as I say, people, whatever your interaction is with the public in any way, especially for teams and things like that, and understanding that this can happen within your group. Is a really, really big thing. I was noticing a post earlier today about the whole paranormal unity thing, and it drives me a little crazy for a few reasons. But one of the main reasons it drives me crazy is because usually the people that post that are the people that are causing the problem, which is frustrating. So, but it's interesting, because there's a lot of this kind of manipulation and things like that that go on within the sort of the paranormal or parapsychological community and circle, which is why I tend to lean towards the academic side a little bit more, because I find the groups and the team stuff gets very, very catty. But it's all this. So this is some stuff anyway that I've learned about these people. I hope it's going to help you guys identify what to do about it. So the next part that I want to talk about is, what in the hell do you do when you've got somebody in your life and your experience that's like this? What do you do with that? Because once they're in, they're kind of in, and it can be very difficult to get them out. So I'm going to pass on to you guys what I ended up doing on multiple occasions with these people, so that you guys can understand. And let me tell you, it is not pretty. It's really, really, really not pretty. And when you decide that you're going to eject these people out of your experience, be prepared. Be prepared. The riot that will start, let me tell you, it is crazy. When you call out a narcissist, or, you know, any of these personality types, you have to be very careful, because it delivers what they call in psychology a narcissistic injury. And it's not for them just a matter of going, oh my God, okay, yeah, you're right, I was wrong, I was being mean. What they see is a knock to their self-image. They see it as an identity problem. They see it as like the mirror. You are their mirror, so now the mirror has broken, right? It's now reflecting back an image to them that was not, like, it's not conducive to their grandiose appearance and self-talk. So they lose it, because remember, these people have very fragile egos, like very fragile. And if you're dealing with somebody like this in a relationship or something like that, you got to be extremely careful, because they can get very dangerous very quickly, and very violent very quickly. So the way, first of all, if you know somebody that's like this in your life, and you're at a distance with them, just stop dealing with them. Like, just stop. You're not going to change them. They're not going to get better. In fact, these people tend to get worse in their old age. So the older they get, the worse they're going to get. So they're not going to change. They don't learn. They don't respond to therapy. So just, if you want to know how to engage with these people, just don't do it. Don't worry about hurting their feelings, because you can't. And they really do see you as an opportunity as property. And it's so against what the majority of people like you and I how we view other people. We just don't view people like that. But we have to understand that we are no different to them than their hairdryer that's sitting in their bathroom. We will get disposed of very quickly. So we have to be very careful about that and how to approach it. So if you have them at a distance and you know they're there, just stop dealing with them. If you've got somebody who is in your experience that's like this, one of the best techniques that I learned very quickly was to kind of what they call gray rock these people. And to gray rock them is basically to give absolutely no emotional reaction at all. Indifference is their kryptonite. Don't get angry, don't get emotional, don't get upset as much as their behavior is terrible and upsetting. Indifference is their kryptonite, hands down, because they're looking for a reflection. Remember, they're looking for adoration, they're looking for reflection, they're looking for emotion or upset or something. And if you're gray rocking it, you're not giving them what they need, and they will tend to just move on because it's just they're not getting a response out of you, or at least the response that they want. So you just cut the information off, gray rock them, don't engage any longer, and slowly begin to remove them from your experience. I had one that was a real problem for about a year, and he would show up different places just desperately trying to get my attention, and every single time it was just gotta gray rock this person. He ended up turning around and phoning like friends and all sorts of things, like just trying to find a way in the door. But the good thing is that my group, and this is the next key for people like this, is you have to have a support system. You have to have a group of people around you that know what the deal is. They understand what's going on. They're not going to cave to the behavior of this person, whoever it is, so that as one of these people starts to test the fence, because that's what they do, they test the fence, there's just no way in. They're like an animal testing an electric fence, like trying to find a weakness. And I remember he phoned around for about a year, like just testing the fence. He would show up in like opportune places where he knew like certain family members of mine would be and things like that, trying to just get an in again, and couldn't. And just couldn't. And every single time he got gray rocked by every one of these people. So we have to understand that getting angry at them, going after them, that kind of thing, it's giving them exactly what they want, which is attention. And the best thing you can do is gray rock, no response, and no way in. I had a friend about a year and a half ago who was dealing with one of these people, and he got quite dangerous, where he had already been violent to her in her relationship. And she would continuously respond to him. He was emailing her incessantly, phoning and emailing and phoning and emailing. And she would get to the point where, he would email 60 times, and 61 times she would email him back. And I kept telling her, I was like, here's the problem with that. Here's what you're teaching this person. You are teaching them that they have to email you 60 times in order to get a reply. So they're going to email you the 60 times. And it was perpetuating the problem over and over and over and over again. So we have to begin to understand that our own behavior and what's going on is really gonna make a huge difference here. How we respond, and if we are responding at all, is gonna be it's a problem. That's a problem. So as soon as you're giving them attention, as soon as you're giving them that response, cut it off. Just cut it off. Don't do it. Don't do it. And sometimes you'll get the sob story. You'll get the sob story, and we get this with, as I say, with negative hauntings as well. We get the identity that has a sob story, who is, who gets upset and is, I lost my loved one and I'm here to find them, and so on and so forth. And we get the sob story from the negative entity when their behavior doesn't match that at all. Doesn't match that at all. It's clearly something else. Brandy was saying, it sounds so exhausting for them to do. Like, what could possibly be motivating them enough to do that? I can't understand the behavior. It's so foreign. Yeah, you're not supposed to understand the behavior because your brain doesn't think like that. Your brain's not supposed to think like that. If we're understanding it and if we can empathize with that, I don't think that's a good thing. It is exhausting. They're living in a constant state of trying to keep up with the lie, and in a constant state of looking to be the victim as well, which can be just it's brutal. It seems so backwards as well, because oftentimes you'll see these people be striving for some modicum of success, and yet as soon as they get involved in the success, or they get they get close to the success, they will shut it off and they will sabotage it immediately. And it's an interesting thing to watch, because you'll get these people who are, as I say, they are, they tend to be very hard workers often. They tend to excel to different levels, whether it be CEO or, a lawyer or, whatever it is. Like, they tend to do really, really well. But as soon as they hit this sort of this impasse of success, and it's like, as soon as anything new is offered to them, they will shut it off and shut it down, because there's a part of them that is always looking to be the victim. They're always looking to be that eternal victim. They really don't want the joy they say they want. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things to realize and touch on, is the fact that they are just so deprived of any sort of level of happiness, joy, fun. They cannot get there. These are some of the most miserable people you will ever meet. They put on a great smile and they put on a great face, and it's like, you're seeing this all the time. But they are some of the most angry, some of the most jealous, and some of the most hateful people I think I've ever experienced. It's really wild. And as I say, and because of that, when they see somebody else, when they see you guys in joy, or, experiencing something wonderful or something like that, it just irks them on every possible level. I often say that, especially like when you reach, success in your experience, whatever that looks like for you, oftentimes what will happen is that you will see them start to get very combative. You'll start to see them get very argumentative, nasty. That's what Jan Van Zandt calls a nice nasty, and it's really, really true. One of my dear friends, she's been having issues like that, interestingly, with her parents, because she's gotten a job and job opportunities recently that have been something that they had wanted when they were younger. They're not having a good experience in their life right now, because they've kind of made a bed, now they've got to lie in it. And now they're treating her that way. She's calling them saying, hey, you know what? I just got this opportunity, and hey, I just, this is happening and that's happening, and I just moved into a nice house. And instead of being really happy for their kid, they're actually, they're really turning on her and causing her a problem every time they phone, and just being like ridiculously just mean. And it's really it's a big turnaround when you're used to that support system going on. But the problem is with when you get something, when you get people that are like this, oftentimes you say, wow, the person has been so supportive, up until this point, I was struggling, or I was suffering, or something was happening in my experience and it sucked, and they were there for me. And the problem is that's how they tend to sort of gain power a little bit, is when they see somebody who is down and out, and they can kind of, be the source of that joy. If they can be your source of joy and your only source of joy, then they're quite happy about that. As soon as you are getting joy and happiness from other places, like, say, you get a new job, or, you get a promotion, or you accomplish a goal or something like that, and they see you starting to gather your momentum and get your feet underneath of you, that becomes a major problem, and they get really upset with that. So all of a sudden, the support that you had when you were, down and out, and maybe you didn't have any money, or you were, striving to get to where you wanted to be, or whatever that is, suddenly becomes a big problem for them, and they will make it damn well known and sabotage the hell out of it if they can, which becomes pretty scary. So that's one of the reasons why you can't have them in your business, you can't have them in your company, nothing. I've become really ruthless with a lot of these people over the years, because the stakes are just too high. They're just too high. You can't afford to be doing that. And we have to understand that we have to have the self-worth. We have to have the self-worth to be able to say, no, you don't get to do this. You don't get to behave like this. And to look after ourselves, we really have to be our own best friends. We really do, because it's amazing what will end up happening. And if we're maintaining and we're taking care of our well-being, one of the best ways to notice whether or not you've got one of these people in your experience, is that it just does not match up with that inner sense of peace and well-being. So the more that we can achieve that, the more we can achieve that sense of knowing what we strive for right here on spiritual healthcare, that sense of alignment, that sense of connection with all that is. We're communicating with the good side of all of this. Man, those red flags stand out a lot more, and it hurts a lot less when you're dealing with them, because when you see it, you can see the behavior patterns. You can see it's like these people are textbooks. They really are textbooks. They are so easy to spot. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. You really can't. And and they're super predictable. Here's the great thing about these people. As my partner always says, he says they're non-learners. They're just non-learners. They don't get it. They repeat the same behaviors over and over and over again. They are all the same. They do the same stuff. Might be different words, but it's the same stuff. So they become very predictable, and it gets in some ways it's a little funny, because they will they do it to the point where you're just going, oh my God, you really can't be this dumb. But it happens. It happens. It's really interesting. So I wanted to read to you guys a little bit from Faith in the Valley today, because there's a passage in here that I think is super applicable to what we've been talking about this morning. And I think it really does have to do with the idea of making a decision for yourself about who you are going to be allowing into your experience. Who are you going to allow into your experience? What does it look like? And one of the ways to do this, and the process that I wanted to offer you guys today as well, is to turn around and make a list of the people in your experience, who you're dealing with, whether it be family or coworkers or partners or whatever you've got going on, and start to compare the categories. Start to look at some of the indicators, and make sure you've got the people in your life that you want to have in your life, and that are going to further you in your experience. As we talked about the blue zones a while ago, and the happiest places in the world, and that they all revolve around something called the Power 9. And one of the 9 factors of the happiest places in the world is knowing who your support group is. Know who it is. Who are these the people in your life that are going to help you reach your potential? Got to do it. You gotta do it. Des is saying crazy family. Yeah, it's, man, let me tell you, there are family members out there. And you can't be afraid to deal with that too. I've had a lot of people say, yeah, but it's my brother, or yeah, it's my sister, or yeah, it's my parent, or, whatever. And it's like, what are you gonna do? You gotta be really ruthless with this. And know how to set a boundary. Know what the expectations are, and be prepared to enforce that boundary. Be prepared to enforce it, because if you're not, they're going to see that too. Again, remember, you're looking at somebody who's very opportunistic, and if they see the fact you're not going to support the boundary, they're going to run with that. And it's going to be a big problem. So if you have to be dealing with one in your experience, because sometimes it's a boss, sometimes it's it's somebody that you can't necessarily get rid of right off the bat, is to remember that be prepared to set your boundaries, be prepared to enforce them, and when you do enforce them, be prepared for the tantrum that's going to follow, because there's going to be a tantrum, but you can't allow that to sway you. That's when you pull in that next tactic, gray rocket. No emotion, no response. Indifference is their kryptonite. I can't say that enough. Be indifferent, and you'll watch them eventually back off and walk away. But they will do it with a fantastically huge and very immature tantrum first. They will oftentimes crash out of your experience rather than slip away. So I want to read you guys this passage because I think it's relevant. So check this out. When you make a decision and a commitment to do something good for yourself, it's like dropping a pebble in a pond. It has a rippling effect. Energy vibrations are sent out into the universe that touch people and places you may not see. The firmer the decision, the stronger the frequency, and the wider range of things that will be reached. Those things are being prepared to receive, support, and assist you in honoring your decision. The ripples closest to you may make you uncomfortable. They might rattle you a bit, and that's okay. It's bound to happen. A decision will usually have a long-term and far-reaching effect. However, if it's good for you, all you have to do is stand firm. All that you need will find its way to you, and the unnerving ripples around you will go away soon. And it really is, it's super true. It's super true. And it's kind of getting through that can be really hard. And especially when we're dealing, as I say, with a subject like this, because, when we've got people, that are this way, they like to try to guilt. They like to guilt. They like to, oh, you've hurt me. You've hurt my feelings, and whatnot. And what's interesting is that when you can understand and study the subject a little bit, you will hear the same thing come out of every single one of them. They go through the same process, and it comes out as, well, oh, you've greatly, you've so hurt me, in one breath, and then in the next breath, you're the worst person they've ever met. It's really interesting, and it's almost like they kind of run a gambit of lines and tactics that they've got, and they just start throwing stuff at you just to see what's gonna work. And you got to stay indifferent. You got to gray rock them. And as I say, it's super, super important to not get in an argument with them. We talked a little bit about this misdirecting, and one of the tactics that you'll often see with people like this is that they will you will address a behavior with them, and at the end of the conversation, you find yourself apologizing. And this is something that it's very sneaky, but it turns from, I did this bad thing, to you turning around and going, oh my God, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. And it's an amazing twist that they do. It's really quite incredible to watch, but it's something to pay attention to. And as I say, if you're dealing with this, whether if it's a client or something like that, cut it off. You don't owe them an explanation. You don't even have to tell them why. This is really about being your own best friend. In spiritual healthcare, we've talked so long and so much about, honoring ourselves, honoring who we are, and making sure that our experience is a positive reflection about everything that's going on, in our minds, hearts, bodies, and things like that. And the one thing we have to acknowledge, that if we have somebody like this in our experience that is causing is directly interacting with us, we have to treat them like we would treat a negative entity. And also ask ourselves, what is it about me that has allowed this person into my experience and made this person think that they can do what they're doing? Because there's something that you're giving off. There's something you're giving off that is indicative to them and has clued them in that you would be a good target. There's something going on. There's something in your energy. There's something unhealed. There's something unaddressed. There's something up where they've looked at you and thought, yeah, you'll work, and they'll move in on that. So you've got to heal it up. This is one of the reasons why we got to do the work. We have to be healing this stuff up, because if we don't, we end up in frequency range of people like this. So we have to be, we got to be on point, because to think that they're not out there that's crazy too. So we got to be aware of it and make sure we're healing up our stuff, so that when they walk by, they see us and go, oh, hell no, I'm not messing with that. That's not a good thing. So I want to leave you guys with that today, and whatnot. I'm going to be out and about. I've got a bit of a trip here coming up that I've got to go do, and so I will be back on July the 8th. We will be right back here doing spiritual healthcare on July the 8th, guys. But in between all that, you guys have all of the classes on youtube.com/entityseeker, as well as entityseeker.ca, and it's going to be good, and I will have lots for you guys when we get back. Brandy was wondering if I could expand on the malignant narcissist personality, and the impacts, what we're seeing, whether people are swayed to the narcissist point of view. There we go. And how possibly to curb that movement. I think that's a brilliant idea. I think that's what the next class, I think that's exactly what we got to do. I love that. Yeah. Because that's the malignant narcissist. That's a whole nother ball game, guys. We're going to go into that next class, because I think that is absolutely key. There are many different types of these people. Like I said at the beginning, this is a spectrum. This is a spectrum issue. They are all over the map, because as I say, you've got the people that are on the one end of the spectrum who are, just kind of, kind of toxic and you just don't really want to deal with them. And then you got the people that are way on the other end of that spectrum, and it's a whole nother ball game, and they are dangerous as hell. So the malignant narcissist is something that is, I think is a great idea to address and talk about, and we will do that in the next class. So that will be July the 8th, you guys. We will talk about that. Bring your stories. In the meantime, as I say, go through your list. Take a hard look at the people in your experience, and make sure you don't have one of these people that's kind of lurking under the surface that can move into your experience. And remember that, as I say, check yourself. If you do, check yourself. What is it that's making you a target? And number two, after that, what you're going to do is you're going to take a look at how at that point you can change your emotional state, change your frequency, get yourself out of range of these people, because everything is frequency. Everything's frequency. And once you start to heal up that stuff, people like that, they fall away. There's nothing to target anymore. Nothing to target. Just like in a negative haunting, it becomes nothing to target. So I will see you guys then, and I'm looking forward to all of it. We've got lots to talk about on this subject, and we're gonna have Canada Day. We're gonna have July 4th. It's all coming up. So I will see you guys then, and lots of posts. Send me your questions. Send me your stories. I will be answering as I go along. And I will see you guys back here at Spiritual Healthcare on July the 8th. And we will keep this going. So have a wonderful day, everybody. And I will talk to you all really, really soon. I'll be sending you guys videos. Okay. Talk to you all soon, everybody. Bye-bye.